Pepe, how are you?
Well, man, I am in Shanghai, so I'm very well. Yeah, it's a long story, but if you allow me, let
Well,
me talk about China today.
yeah,
I,
tell
I am
me, tell me.
I am fed up with this war thing. I can't stand it, especially because from here, it's so far away, and from a Chinese, Shanghainese business development point of view, these wars, both of them, the proxy war in Ukraine and the war against Iran, of course, you see comments, you go to business lunches, there is the odd comment about it, but it's so far away compared to the Chinese drive, the famous Xi Jinping defined path to modernization. But of course, from our point of view as visiting foreigners, even if we have economic or business or academic relationships here, we need to keep track of especially West Asia. But the big thing, Mario, as you know, is Vladimir Putin has landed in Beijing. And tomorrow is the big day in Beijing. It's a very special summit between Putin and Xi. There's going to be later on a very private tea time conversation between both, closed doors. This could go on easily for 2 hours or more. And there will be some very serious announcements. Essentially, what we're going to see tomorrow in Beijing is, I would say, the real foundation stone for a new system of international relations, signed, sealed, and delivered by Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. This is as hardcore as it gets, you know. Basically, in the driving seat of their strategic partnership, they will be announcing, look, from now on, this whole configuration of forming a multipolar world, we are in the driving seat. As, by the way, Xi told Putin 3 years ago, 2023, after their meeting at the Kremlin. We are right in the middle of changes we have not seen in 100 years. And they both said yes, but now we are in the driving seat. And this is going to be essentially formalized tomorrow. So that's why this is so important. And this is what they are paying attention here in Shanghai. Why Shanghai is essential? Because Shanghai is the business, geoeconomic, cultural capital of China. So Beijing, of course, is the overarching political center. Of course, everything political is concentrated in Beijing. But here, the top business decisions, they are made here. The stock exchange is here, combined with Shenzhen. All the spectacular achievements of Chinese culture for the past 5,000 years, most of them are concentrated here. Not only in public, in the museums, but also in private. So this is the center of the action. And as a city here, this is the new New York for quite a while, and now more than ever. This is the capital of the 21st century, which is going to be the Eurasia century. It's not going to be the new American century. Whatever comes from Washington and whatever comes from the people who rule the show in Washington, not some psychopath, you know.
How what do you think will be the focus of the meeting between Xi and Putin?
Oh, there are so many. You should see the quality and the depth of the Russian delegation. It's very. It's of course the Russians can even laugh about it. Ushakov and Peskov already said, "Look, you should not compare the size of our delegation with the American delegation last week. It's a completely different story. This is a very serious political business delegation. First of all, because they're going to discuss a series of agreements and deeper agreements, new possible deals, and they are scheduled to sign at least 40 documents on all sorts of geo-economic collaboration. And one of the key focus is energy. They are going to formalize the final details for the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline, the one who goes through Mongolia. And obviously, the Europeans are going to be looking at it and thinking, if they still have an IQ somewhere in Brussels, especially, well, this is the energy that we lost. Instead of selling it to us, the Russians are selling it to the Chinese for an excellent price. There was a lot of haggling. The quantities are absolutely outstanding. And combined with the first pipeline, the ESPO, with the SPO and the Power of Siberia together, gas needs for China won't be a problem for the foreseeable future. So this is going to be the most
coming from Russia.
Yeah, of course. Power of Siberia, the only thing missing, Mario, which is was complicated because they were haggling about price, essentially, because that oscillates a lot. But they need to build an interconnector because it goes through Mongolia, from Siberia through Mongolia and arriving in Xinjiang in China. So now this is settled. Mongolia is part of it. I mean, Mongolia, they're going to have gas and they're going to have the transit rights as well. So for them, it's a fabulous deal. And for China, it couldn't be better than this. And of course, this is going to be accelerated. There were the projections were, okay, we're going to have it finished by 2030. No. This could be finished between 2027 2028. So that's it. In terms of our Chinese clincher on no more problems for their gas supply, this is better than anything. And compounded with the other sources, of course, from Turkmenistan, from Myanmar, etc. So they're not worried about, and obviously they are not too worried about this beyond stupid American blockade on the Iranian ports. This doesn't affect China, just a little.
There's a report that came in today, I think the New York Times said that she told Trump that Putin, quote, might end up regretting.
I'm sorry, Mario. Now you got me. Because this is my bullshit of the day. I had discussed. Yes, we discussed this at the business dinner that I had today in Shanghai, and obviously the Chinese were laughing, roaring with laughter with that. How can you possibly expect that a stupid mutt writing for the MI6 infested Financial Times would know what she told Putin? And on top of it, this is an internal security matter for Russia, as it is understood by the Chinese. So what are we going to have tomorrow when they start discussing what's happening in Ukraine now, the stalemate, and the fact, immensely important fact, that this drone attack against Moscow this past weekend, Putin simply cannot afford not to respond very forcefully.
Can you tell me more about what makes that attack? Because I haven't been keeping up with the Ukraine war as much as I usually do. What makes that attack so significant? It's been mentioned to me a few times yesterday.
Because once again, and compared to the latest drone attacks against Moscow, which were last year, in fact.
It's been a long time.
Probably a long time. Probably, if I'm not mistaken, a year ago or so, or 8 months, 9 months ago. That's a long time. This new one, basically the victims were civilians in Moscow City. This is beyond a red line. This, as it's been explained by the Russian government for over 3 years, this is a terrorist attack. So they need to respond, and they are still calculating how they're going to respond, especially because they know that this drone operation, especially for the past 2 to 3 months, is essentially NATO, and most of them the guys who are coordinating the whole thing are the Brits. So you need a response that will have to include the Baltic Chihuahuas, possibly Poland, and how are you going to respond to the Brits without provoking a global war? So this is what Putin and Xi will be discussing tomorrow. Because essentially Putin is going to tell Xi, we know exactly what you think about the war on Ukraine. We also want to finish that war. But now we are dealing with, not with the regime, we are dealing with a terrorist organization at the Bankova in Kiev. Lots of people, very well imported, connected people in the intel agencies, in the intel apparatus in Moscow, now they are being very forceful. You have to go to decapitate the head of the snake. As we all know, at the same time, as we all know, all of us who have been exposed to how Moscow works, this is not how Putin works. Putin is a cold, calculist, lawyerly type with immense patience. But now, Mario, now this is being discussed openly in civil society in Russia. That's it. This means he's going to have to do something more drastic. We still don't know what. And of course, there are all sorts of rumors. Okay, once again, nobody can say that they know what the the Security Council in Moscow is thinking. No, nobody knows it. The only ones who know are, and he won't say it, Medvedev, for instance. Or, for instance, Bortnikov from the FSB. He's always the silent type. And the SVR, Russian Foreign Intelligence, the same thing. The SVR sometimes, Narishkin gives a hint that, look, sooner or later, this thing is going to get much more hardcore. And the time is now. And of course, it's very difficult for Putin to explain that to Xi, but he can count on understanding from the Chinese. There's a similarity between this trip and their meeting during the Beijing Olympics, which was only a few days before the start of the SMO. During that interaction, at the time of the Beijing Olympics, this is when Putin told Xi, look, we're going to have to do something about Donbass. From the beginning, and this is when we were following Chinese academics at the time, their reaction, and what was allowed to be published in the Chinese media. There was not full support for the idea. They didn't like the idea because the Chinese saw that this could go out of control. After, let's say, a year or so with a counter-offensive from the Ukrainians and all that, the Chinese their position started to be much more nuanced, and they understood the imperative for Russia to fight basically against Nazi fascism in Ukraine. And that's has been the Chinese position for this past year and a half, 2 years. But now the situation on the ground changed completely. Because now, considering that there's no way out for Ukraine except engaging in a terrorist operation long-term, which is attacking targets inside the Russian Federation, including civilian targets, it's a completely different ballgame. And of course, Xi Jinping will understand if Putin tells him, look, now we're going to have to go a CDC highway to hell, which we didn't want to do before.
In terms of civilian targets, I think there's been civilian targets struck by both sides. I've seen the buildings and the civilian infrastructure struck on the Ukrainian side. My assumption would be that both are not doing it intentionally, but I'm not following it closely. So a lot of people like yourself are following it a lot more closely than I. In terms of how Putin might retaliate, there is talks about him striking NATO territory, and this is the ideal time. There's a guy, I was talking about him a couple of days ago, Sergei Karaganov, and he was talking about the infamous statement he made a few days ago in terms of striking NATO territory and potentially considering a tactical nuke. And he's not someone that would usually, from what I understand, he doesn't usually speak, he's not Medvedev. And there is talks among people that this could be the right time to escalate and strike NATO, the drone manufacturers or warehouses, because the West is spread very thin. Ukraine is not getting the munitions they need from the US. US is too distracted by Iran. And the last thing Trump could do before the midterms is get stuck into yet another war. Do you agree with that concern? Is that how, if Russia was to escalate, is that what they would do? Or would they do something more similar to what the Ukrainians are warning about? Is they believe that in Kiev, their command and control structure and leadership is at risk?
Russia is not going to escalate in an American shock and awe way. This is not the way they operate. By the way, Mario, Karaganov is a friend of mine. We can say that we are personal friends. Just to give you an idea in our audience, 4 days before the start of the war on Iran, on the decapitation strike on Saturday, that was a Tuesday night. I visited Karaganov at his office at the Higher School of Economics, and we had an off-the-record discussion. I promised him, once again, we usually, when we talk, it's off the record. And I said, Professor, I won't publish anything about our conversation. What is interesting is that he gave an interview to RT, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and he wrote a very, very strong essay, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago at one of the Russian political magazines as well, basically saying that the only thing that when he mentions Europeans is essentially NATO, but that applies a little bit to the EU as well, but essentially NATO. The only language that they understand is fear. That's a completely different interpretation compared to President Putin. By the way, Karaganov, Putin respects Karaganov a lot. Karaganov has been an advisor to Russian presidents. He is one of the most important political scientists in Russia, in modern Russia. But his point of view in this past few years especially, which was to a certain extent adopted by the Russian government. It's something that we can call, the catchphrase is Siberianization, which is basically develop Siberia and the Russian Far East to the same level of the Russian West connected to Europe. So this is the number one priority, which is one of the priorities of Putin personally. He is involved in this, okay, our conquest of the East compared to the Chinese conquest of the West, which was, Xinjiang and Tibet. For Russia, the conquest of the East is the Arctic and the Russian Far East and the eastern part of Siberia. So these are the priorities. So you cannot invest completely in this project of national unity and national security if problems in your western borders are not solved. And that's where Ukraine comes in, and how to deal with the Baltic chihuahuas. So we have, for instance, Karaganov and some very well-positioned people in the intel agencies, in the FSB and in the SVR, foreign intel as well, who are advocating, look, we have to go there and then smash all that. That's it. That's it. We were too patient. And this is something that history always tells us. Don't mess with the patience of the Russian bear. And we are once again in this historical juncture. But Putin, once again, until the last moment, he refuses to do something more rash involving the West as a whole. Europe, but the West as a whole. Because he still deeply believes, and we still don't know what's going to make him change his mind, that there can be some sort of accommodation between Europe and Russia. To be very blunt, realistically, all of us will follow Russia and go to Russia frequently. That's not going to happen. And also follow Europe. That's not going to happen. In fact, Europe is preparing for a war against Russia by 2030. It's a completely different situation. So the window that you mentioned, which is some analysts are mentioning as well, this window at the moment does exist. But to do what? another 2 or 3 other sneaks against NATO bases in Poland or in Germany. Is this going to solve anything? No, it won't. It will instill fear, absolutely, in some of these European elites. Will they abandon the project of rearming and weaponizing themselves for a possible war against Russia by 2030, according to internal NATO documents? It's not going to change a thing. So you see, so there's a sort of Putin is in a very complicated position. He needs to send a signal to NATO and to the eastern part of NATO that, look, stop messing with us, because the consequences, if we decide to go for broke, you are going to be turned into serial parking lots, all of you. We don't want that to happen. But if you continue like this, you're going to pay a price. So that's the kind of message that we can assume might be coming from Moscow within the next few weeks, let's put it this way. And if this drone attacks using Baltic Chihuahua territory to reach Russia and killing Russian civilians, if that continues, then all bets are off. The response is going to be really, really radical. So you can imagine how it's very, very touchy tomorrow when they will be discussing this face-to-face, because this is what Putin will be trying to explain to Xi Jinping. Okay, we have our strategic partnership. We are launching a new system of international relations. We are the drivers of multipolarity and all that. But you don't have the problem that we have at the moment, which is a serious threat on our Western borders. And of course, because they are supporting Iran as well, different levels, but they are supporting Iran several different levels. And they see how Iran has dealt with an enormous threat against their whole territory. But this is not how Russia would react. And don't forget, Russia is a nuclear power. If you mess with the bear, don't forget, this is the #1 nuclear power on the planet. You better know what you're doing. And they don't know what they're doing, Mario. These are absolutely stupid, retarded European elites.
Talking about Iran, because I think that's one way. If the Iran war continues, and Trump was just asked now, how many days does Iran have to come to the table? He said 2 or 3 days, maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe early next week, in a limited period of time. So that comes after his sudden announcement yesterday that thanks to the 3 Gulf countries, he will delay what was imminent strikes on Iran that was meant to happen today. So he's delayed those, and he said yesterday and again today by 2 to 3 days. Now, whether he means it or not, obviously, it's up for interpretation with Trump. But the fact that he keeps saying that, and he said it a lot yesterday, that either they give concessions on the nuclear program, or he's going to get back to war. I understand that he's always bluffing and posts everything and always posts everything and anything. At the same time, the more he does this, he's kind of painting himself in a corner. And when he gives days, like 2 to 3 days, there's only taco is one thing. But like when you put yourself in a corner so much, like imagine he says, any leader say, oh, let's say Trump. Imagine Trump says, there will never be a time ever, ever, ever where I will accept an Iran that controls the Strait of Hormuz under any circumstances ever. And he keeps saying this time and time and time again. It's going to be very hard to tackle from something that you've said so many times. Even his voters would notice. So my concern is statements that he just made now a few minutes ago is that he means it. The strikes are, I wouldn't say imminent, but if there is nothing groundbreaking when it comes to the negotiations, then it's not looking good, to be honest. They're very far apart still. That he is planning to strike Iran. What do you make of it?
There are no negotiations, Mario, at all. Everybody knows the key Iranian points. The number may vary. It could be 10, could be 3, could be 14, it could be 5, but it's still the same thing. And they delineate it in detail, coming from all sorts of sources, from Galibaf to the IRGC to members of the parliament, you name it. The order The procedure is established by the Iranian leadership, and it will not change, whatever happens. Number one, end of the war and end of the other wars against the axis of resistance. And this has to be, there's got to be guarantors for that. And the number two, the top two guarantors will be inevitably, it's not going to be Pakistan or Oman. It's going to be Russia and China. Number two, we discussed the Strait of Hormuz. By the way, the legal framework and the new procedure in the Strait of Hormuz is already settled. There is a new body taking care of the Persian Gulf.
They even created it. They created an X account as well. I'm not sure if you saw that.
Exactly. The settlement system, which is going to be in Riyadh, but there will be certainly openings for a petro yuan and for a Bitcoin. And number three, according to the Iranian proposals, then we discuss a possible new nuclear deal, which for all practical purposes, all of us who followed JCPOA in Vienna in 2015, is going to be maybe a diluted version of the original JCPOA, which Trump destroyed. So he's not going to get anything better, between commas, than the original JCPOA that he destroyed. So that's it. And obviously he keeps saying, everything is unacceptable. And if they don't accept our proposals, which is basically an intimation for Iran to capitulate, I'm going to bomb them again. This, I would say, intergalactic bullshit that Saudi, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi talked him out of bombing what was already planned. First of all, there was nothing planned. There was lots of scenarios. And second, these three, at least one of them would never tell him that. We all know for sure, and it's fully documented by the Iranians, in fact, that the United Arab Emirates, for all practical purposes, is at war against Iran, period. There are no nuances on that. They were involved in direct attacks against Iranian targets during the war. There will be payback. The payback has not started yet coming from Iran. Saudi Arabia is a completely different story. Saudi Arabia is part of we can say that they are part, although typical Saudi, because they're always hedging, of the peace camp. Why? Because even before Islamabad won, we had that famous 4 Sunni meeting in Islamabad. Is that the first one? We had Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Pakistan. This led to the Pakistani foreign minister going to Beijing, coming here to China to talk to one